Jake Kaminski here. Today I'm going to talk to you about the new Hoyt Recurve Prodigy series for 2015. I've got the regular Prodigy here. The Prodigy XT is the one with the tech bar. I'm going to talk about a couple features including the Vertitune as well as this new limb pocket adjustment system. The entire thing has changed and it's really going to change the outlook of a lot of people's opinion on riser and limb alignment systems. And this is definitely going to allow you to align any limb in any condition perfectly straight every time. I'm going to show you how to do it after I break down the bow and show you a couple features here. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Vertitune system. So that basically allows you to change this plate out, which is your clicker plate and your plunger hole locator, as well as where the rest will sit. It changes this entire plate location up and down vertically. So there's basically this packet that comes in each limb, or each box, each riser box, and it has three different plates. It's got a high plate, medium plate, and a low. Maybe you want to run the high plate for indoors for clearance for big arrows and big veins, and then you can put your X10s on in the low position for outside. So the high plate on the Vertitune system is identical to the HPX and the Ion X. The medium plate is identical to the RX, and the low plate is an eighth inch lower than that of the RX. Each plate location is an 1/8 inch difference, so you can use that when guessing which system you would like to use. For me personally, I shot the Ion X and the HPX very well, so I'm going to start with the high plate. Eventually I'm going to set up 3 strings with the high, medium, and low plate knocking points with the proper tune, and then actually go out there and field test it and then decide which one to go with. But for now, I'm going to go with the high plate. So as you can see here, this entire system is new. In the past, on the sight window side of the bow, which would be on this side here, from this side of this Allen wrench and this entire dowel and the hard lock system was all one piece. But now this is a cap that tightens down on this dowel, so if you wanted to take that off to put a new shim on, you don't have to take the entire system out. I'll take this apart eventually and show you. So these two little dots here are what will allow you to pivot the limb, so it allows you to raise one side or the other when you put shims underneath each side to raise or lower. And then you access them through these Allen wrench holes on the back. Alright, now I've got both hard lock systems disassembled. As you can tell, this one is still partially assembled right here. Basically what I did was I left it how you would normally see a Hoyt hard lock system, where the side that comes in through the sight window is the actual side that will adjust left and right on the limbs with these shims. Now many people out there don't know that the difference in color of these shims means they're different thicknesses. The brass washers, the brass colored or gold colored ones here, are 10,000 shims, and these silver shims are 5,000 shims. So this is a half of the thickness of this. So if you need just a little bit more of an adjustment to get your limbs perfect, use these instead of these. So you can see with this one here, I've got it completely disassembled. This is the complete system right here. That is the hard adjustment system. This is a one-piece cap, and this is a 2-piece cap that has a Allen wrench head screw, a button head screw with a cap. Now this side, which is on the opposite the sight window side, so the side of the bow that the sight actually mounts on, this is only holding the extra shims. This side, or this side here, is the only side that is actually adjusting the limbs left and right. Now as you can see, I've actually pulled one of these pivoting system screws out of the limb dowel itself, which is a right-handed screw, so meaning from this side, if you were taking and turning clockwise, it would tighten it, but because the screw is from the back side, the access Allen head screw is from the back side, it's opposite. You need to go counterclockwise in order to tighten. So you can also see these smaller washers as well, because they go underneath each of these pins, I guess you would call them. So say if I wanted this side to come up, I would put one shim under here and then tighten it back down. The brass shim looks like it's 20 thousandths, and the silver shims look like they're still 5 thousandths. So these are very small. This would be a very big adjustment. It does come from the factory with some shims underneath both sides. I would go ahead and remove those and run 0 shims if you don't need them. That will make adjustments much easier, and you know when you add one to one side it's going to be there, because you never know if it came from the factory. There may be a shim missing. Sometimes it happens. We all make mistakes. But basically, I would start from 0, but the manual or the factory says do not exceed 30 thousandths under one side. If you do that, you genuinely have a problem, and you should contact customer service and see what they recommend. Okay, so now we got the bow assembled again. Check out my sweet floor, my new office. But you can see I have the bow strung up, I have it supported by a chair, and I have these biter limb blocks. Okay, this is a very important tool. Every recurve shooter should have them. They're very affordable and they are indispensable. Now, from the factory in the past, it came with 2 shims on each side of the limb dowel system, meaning 2 brass shims, so 2 10,000th shims. Now they're coming from the factory with 1 brass shim on each side and 2 silver shims on each side for a total of 20 thousandths still. So if you're having a hard time adjusting your limbs, just go back to 20 thousandths on each side and you're definitely gonna make it easier on yourself. So right now you can see I'll zoom in here and I've got the string lined up in the center of my hot rod stabilizer. It's a little off center. There, now it's centered, right? So if I pan up, I can show you that the limbs are pretty close from the factory. It's favoring the right side just a touch, but I can show you how to get that fixed. So now if I pan down to the bottom, you can see it is definitely a little bit off to the one side, the right side. So by fixing the bottom, I bet you that the top will come into alignment. It is very, very close. If I go back and check the stabilizer again, let's see, yep, the top's off a little bit and the bottom is definitely off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move a shim from the right side to the left side. So I'm going to move a shim towards the gap in the biter block. You can see the gap on the left side between the string and the block. So I'm going to move it from the right to the left. I'm going to do 1 brass shim, so 10 thousandths, and I will start the video again and show you. Okay, now I took a shim from the right side and put it on the left side. Yes, it doesn't matter when you take a shim out of the right side. However, it's just easy to keep track of shims that way, and when you need to move your limb system, the hard lock system, left and right, if you use the putting a shim towards the gap, you will not fail. It will work. So again, see how the string is in the center of my stabilizer, right? Now if I pan up, the top is a little bit to the left and the stabilizer is still in the center. Now the bottom is perfect. So now it's either telling me that my top one is a half a shim off or I moved too much on the bottom. So I'm going to triple check here. Let me move the camera just to get another good perspective, because this camera, it's a little tricky. It's got a stabilizing lens, so as I move it up and down, the lens moves a little bit. So with my eye, I could see the top limb and the bottom limb were perfect. No, the top limb's a little bit to the left. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a half a shim on the right side of the top. So I'm going to take a half shim off the left, which is the actual adjustments. So as you can see, center of the stabilizer, top limb's perfect, bottom limb's perfect. So right now this bow is absolutely 100% in plane. So that means it's perfectly straight from the string to each limb is now balanced against each other and balanced in the center of the bow. Now, many people use these biter limb blocks and they'll put them up much more towards the T in Hoyt, but because of this new system, you should put them at the base of the limb, and I'll show you why. So right now you can see I have 2 blocks on the top limb. I have one at the very base of the limb and one towards the tip of the limb, very, very high up. We can again check and see that the base of the limb is straight compared to the stabilizer. See how it's centered there? Now as we move up and we look, the string lays perfectly in the center of the top block. Now this means that the limb has no twist per se. Now when I say twist, I don't mean literally a twist. Now this could be perceived as a twist because the thickness of the clear coat on one side compared to the other, where the mating surfaces of the limbs are, can have a little bit more on one side than the other. Now this is just going to happen with any sort of process, whether it's a man-made or a machine painted limb. It's just going to happen. So that's why this system is so great. I'll show you on the bottom limb. It is a little bit off, I only have 3 biter blocks, so I'm gonna have to move the top one to the bottom, but that basically is what is gonna allow you to take out. Now, because the top one and the bottom one are both perfectly in the center and aligned to the stabilizer, that means that the limb will track perfectly straight. So if I were to pull the bow back at full draw and look at how the string lays on the limb as I slowly let it down, it will come down the exact center of the limb every single time and be repeatable. Okay, so now I've got the biter block switched to the bottom. You see how the bottom limb is perfect at the base of the limb, or the part closest to the riser, but then if you go down, you can see how the limb tip is off just a little bit towards the right side, so the limb is actually leaning a little bit to the right. Now, it's not leaning necessarily, and it's not really twisting per se, but I will explain it after I make this perfectly straight. So first I'll explain to you the theory on how we can get this limb to be straight. Now, just from experience, I can tell you how to adjust it because I've been doing this system for a little bit now, and what I can tell you is that on this side of the limb, it is too far away from the camera right now, and this side is too close to the camera. So that makes the limb twist, or it induces a little bit of a twist this way. So we've aligned the limb this way, but now we want to bring this twist back. So we'll be able to bring both this biter block and this biter block into alignment, along with the top one and the stabilizer all together at once, by reducing the twist per se, by putting shims under this side of this adjustment system here, and it will make the limb now level. Now, when you put the biter block close to the adjustment system like this, it takes out any sort of twisting relationship out of the equation, so you do not confuse this with this. So because we have it right here, we first adjust the limb this way to be centered amongst the bow along with the top limb together. And now, because the limb is off just a little bit this way, it makes the limb tip track differently, because the limb tip is not perfectly in the third dimensional axis aligned with the adjustment system here. It is further behind the adjustment system. So because it is basically angled up like this, and then you angle it like this, it will make this tip go further left. And if it was this way, it would make it go further right. Okay? So that is why we are going to add shims under this side to bring it from here to here, because we've already adjusted it this way, meaning left and right. Alright, so now I've got it set up right. The top limb, check it, centered. Bottom limb, centered. Tip of the limb, basically centered. I mean, it's just barely off. You can verify it by pulling back and seeing how the limb tip tracks, and it does track straight. So I'm calling that good enough. I tried another 5/1000 shim, and it was too much. So by now you should be able to use your adjustment system on the Prodigy series risers to be able to align your limbs not only left and right perfectly, but also to track perfectly straight. If you see the limb offset to the right towards the tip, you want to add shims on the left side. So add shims to the opposite side of where you see the twist, and that will bring it into play. Now, let me show you how I track limbs real quick. So basically what I do is I hold just at the top limb, I pull the string back, and I look where the string lays down into the string tip as it's coming down. The top's perfect and the bottom's perfect. So I know that my limbs are pulling back perfectly straight, and then when I let go, it's going to shoot the arrow perfectly straight. So we went over a little bit of the Prodigy. We explained the Vertitune plates, we explained the new system, how it works, and how to use it more importantly. But I wanted to let you know a couple of things on how you're aligning your limbs, a couple of caveats. You want to make sure that your stabilizers are straight. So basically, as you're screwing and unscrewing your stabilizer, if you put a little bit of load on it in the down position as I'm unscrewing the stabilizer, it is generally staying in the very same place as I'm screwing it in and out. Now, that is one quick way to test and see if your stabilizer is straight if you don't have multiple stabilizers. Luckily, I've got a couple of them, so I put in a bunch of different stabilizers and check the alignment, and some of them are off, but I take the majority of where the stabilizers end up into consideration when I'm aligning the bow. Some people can use just the back side of their riser, but I like using my stabilizer because it's further out and it gives me an even easier view of the entire system. Every time you string and unstring your bow, so every single time I pull my limb apart and I'm adjusting the system and I go to put it back together, before I check the alignment, after I string it, you want to make sure you set the limbs in. And all you got to do is pull the string back just a couple inches. Mine were set in the right place, they didn't have to shift. You will hear it a loud crack if the limbs aren't set in place. So you need to do that at minimum before you put your biter blocks back on. Even pull it back a couple of times to make sure it's set properly. So all this information is in an app that Jesse Broadwater and I created called Aptitune, A-P-P-T-I-T-U-N-E. If you go to aptitune.com, it is available for iPhone and Android devices. And it basically covers recurve and compound setup from top to bottom. How to align your limbs, how to set your center shot, how to set your brace height, your tiller, everything. Even walk back tuning, group tuning, fine tuning, everything. And we're working on coming out with some advanced sections. Me specifically, I'm working on how to tie knocking points, both permanent, unmovable, and movable for tuning, as well as how to build a grip, trim your tab, and others. And it's definitely an important tool. Everything that is in there I genuinely use. I just showed you how to align the limbs. It's just a little bit new now with the pivot system here on the Hoyt Prodigy for 2015. So I'm going to have to create that in an update as a add-on section as well. So yeah, definitely follow me and subscribe to me on YouTube, and you'll see a lot more of these videos coming out now because I have my office built, which will double as a studio. So if you want to see any other videos, don't forget to comment and request, and definitely send me a message. So thanks for watching, and hopefully your Prodigy makes you proud.